France 24's Kethevane Gorjestani was listening to what Donald Trump had to say. Kethevane, where do you want to begin?
A lot of information. I think obviously the fact that he said that if he could be of some help, he would be traveling to Turkey to join that possible meeting, because as you said, we still don't know if that's going to happen. But he said that he wanted a deal and that he believed that he could be of some help. And so we'll see if that actually happens. We have a few more days. He is set to fly out right after this event in the White House to go to first Saudi Arabia, then Qatar and the UAE, and then possibly on the way out go to Turkey on Thursday.
Now, one of the questions the U.S. president was asked about was, of course, the possibility of Qatar gifting the United States and Donald Trump essentially a Boeing 747-800, I believe, which he would essentially use as Air Force One. How did the president justify accepting a gift valued at $400 million from a foreign head of state?
He justified it by saying that it would be stupid not to accept a free plane, which is pretty much what he said, and sort of danced around or dismissed any idea that this was an issue to receive such a large gift from a foreign country, because the question from the reporter was about what guarantees do we have that Qatar is not going to ask for anything in return. And this is something that the U.S. president absolutely did not respond to. He instead placed the blame on Boeing for those delays that are true. There are very big delays on the delivery of that new Air Force One, and that basically Qatar was doing a very incredible gesture by offering that plane that would be used in the meantime until the actual Air Force One is delivered, and that as soon as that would be done, then that Qatari plane would go to Donald Trump's presidential library. And the only thing he said was that once he left office, he would not be using that plane, but definitely did not answer the question about things that are in the law in the United States and in many, many different countries, which is a limit on sort of what type of gifts a president or an official from the government can receive from a foreign country.
Kethevane, Israeli media is reporting that vehicles are en route to receive American-Israeli hostage Idan Alexander. Now, the U.S. president did talk about this and the role Steve Witkoff played in securing his release. What more do we know about this?
Yes, Donald Trump praising Steve Witkoff again for what he has done in this conflict, and it's unclear yet what exactly happened there and how much Steve Witkoff was influential in getting the American hostage released. The fact is that Donald Trump said that he was hoping that many more hostages would be released, because this hostage is the lone living American hostage left, but there are, I believe, 4 other American Israelis who are deceased but still at the hands of Hamas or other groups. And so the focus there is to possibly get other hostages released. But what is interesting with this deal and this hostage release is that it's not like the ones we've seen before. It doesn't seem like Hamas received anything in exchange. In the past, we've seen hostages being released and prisoners being released from Israeli jails in return. In this case, it seems like a sort of gesture of goodwill from Hamas as Donald Trump is heading to the region, maybe to get the Americans to sort of intervene in what is happening in this conflict for a sort of ceasefire as these negotiations are ongoing. But as it stands, we have no reporting or no information on what Hamas would have gotten in return for this release. It seems right now that this release is a one-off, one American hostage release with nothing in return, at least for now, for Hamas.
And it seems that Israel was not in the talks with the United States to secure the release of Idan Alexander. Now, the crux of Donald Trump's press conference today was, of course, drug pricing. Living here in Europe, we know that. Let's take actually a small play a soundbite of the U.S. president talking about what he plans to do and why he wants to lower the price of drugs in the United States.
Lobby is the strongest lobby in this country, they say, the drug lobby. It's between that and lawyers, and they have a lot of power. But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care, countries where they paid a small fraction of what, for the same drug, that what we pay many, many times more for. And will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing. But they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal, brutal.
Now, when it comes to drug prices, according to the U.S. president, the European Union has been brutal on drug prices, even nastier than China, he said at one point. Why is it, Kethevane, that in America, certain drugs, for example, when it comes to weight loss drugs or asthma-related drugs, Americans spend a whole lot more than we do here in Europe? He's right on this point, isn't he?
He's absolutely right, and I'll give you an example that I looked up earlier, which is, for example, the drug Prolia, which is an injection for osteoporosis. In France, the average price without insurance is about 175 to 180 euros. In the United States, well, you can add a zero to that. It's about $1,800 for that same exact shot. So he is right that there is a huge discrepancy, and it's not just European countries, it's across the world. The United States pays 2, 3, 4, 5 times for the same drugs compared to other countries. But the way he's framing it, which is that Europe or other countries are taking advantage of the United States, is not fully right to explain, or at least the only reason to explain why there is this discrepancy. Because you have to understand that unlike in most developed nations, especially here in Europe, like in France or in the UK, where it is the government or the National Health Service that directly negotiates and regulates drug prices directly with Big Pharma. So there is one entity that is doing the negotiating for the setting of the price of a drug. In the United States, it is actually set by Big Pharma, by those pharmaceutical companies, and it is negotiated not with one entity, not with the U.S. government. It is negotiated with each private insurer. There's no unified approach, and we know that in negotiations, might makes right, and if you have a unified front of one entity fighting against another, you have more chance of getting the price that you want. The second thing is that public health providers, we talked about Medicare, because the belief is that the plan that Donald Trump is presenting is going to be focused first on a certain part of Medicare. Medicare is the public health provider for the over 65 in the United States. Until Joe Biden passed the Inflation Reduction Act and a law that allowed Medicare to negotiate directly with Big Pharma, those public health providers were not allowed to negotiate the price of drugs. They were the only ones. Private insurance could, not the public ones. Another thing to add to that, we heard Donald Trump talking about the middlemen. These are the pharmacy benefit managers, the PBMs, that act as intermediaries to negotiate between insurers and employers and Big Pharma. And so there are the middlemen. They're, of course, taking a cut in negotiating those prices. There's also the rule or the patent laws in the United States and the market exclusivity. It goes to the research and development. Yes, American pharmaceutical companies put a lot of money in research and development, and as a return, the government gives them patent law, gives them market exclusivity, which pushes down the road the time when you can have, for example, generic drugs or competition. That also prevents from lowering the prices. And finally, we heard a lot about the lobby. The big pharma lobby is absolutely huge in the United States. They spend millions and millions of dollars in all political campaigns. And that is why you saw Donald Trump being very careful about how he was talking about Big Pharma, saying, we're going to target the Europeans because they're the ones that are making it unfair. I'm going to be on the side of Big Pharma, but then at the same time saying that Big Pharma has been taking advantage of the American people. So there is a balancing act there, because there's Donald Trump, but there's also the Republicans in Congress who are going to, in 18 months, face re-election, especially in the House in the midterms, and they definitely want that money from Big Pharma.
Kethevane, while the U.S. president was speaking, we had India's prime minister who was speaking. It was actually Narendra Modi's first remark since the two sides agreed to a ceasefire. Now, last week, tensions were really high in the region between these two nuclear-armed powers. We had the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance, who essentially said this is their problem. Then over the weekend, on Saturday morning, we had Donald Trump, who said, I have secured a ceasefire between the two sides. Modi didn't really mention the United States in his comments. I was monitoring what he was saying, but it seems that Donald Trump said the U.S. did have a big hand to play, and he thanked the Vice President and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
What has to be said is that it took the United States quite a while to get involved, and that goes to your point about what J.D. Vance said. And it seems like the people who are on the line of J.D. Vance, which is, we don't intervene in what happens abroad. It's not our problem. That is basically the isolationist wing of the MAGA party. And then you have people like Marco Rubio, who, yes, have joined the ranks of MAGA, but are more traditionalist when it comes to foreign policy. And he was the one who got involved, who had calls with Pakistani leadership, with Indian leadership. And it seemed that it was pretty much all that was happening was going through Marco Rubio. Now, how much Marco Rubio's calls with the different leadership helped, whether or not Donald Trump did, as he seemed to be hinting, put pressure on both India and Pakistan, threatening them when it comes to trade or tariffs, in the background. Maybe that happened. We don't know exactly, but it is true that the Americans were slow to intervene, and intervened in very light and not very public ways to try to figure things out in the situation.
Kethevane, thank you very much for that. Kethevane Gorjestani,